Say hi to Jill. Say hi. Hi. We're going to begin in just a few minutes. So Sienna and I are going to just chill here and wait for some more people to join. I'm going to put it back on the image for a minute, and I will see you soon. Hi, everyone. My dad is home, so my dog is about to run. I wanted to let her say hello to everybody before we start. This is Sienna, my favorite color of brown. She's my special guest today. You want to go see Dad? Yeah? Okay, go ahead. Hi, everyone. How is everybody doing today? Happy Thursday. It's Thursday again. Everything's kind of running together at this point. Sienna was very happy to say hi to all of you. She waited so patiently. I'm just going to shut my door here. Okay. How's everybody's quarantine going? Everybody staying safe, washing their hands? All right, so let's do some real talk real quick before we get started. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. I haven't heard much on the lines just yet. So if you need anything, please be reaching out to me. I hope your assignments are going well. I really enjoyed what I've seen so far. Again, really proud of you guys. I'm going to be doing some grading this weekend, so those of you who have turned in things, I will be giving you some feedback on that. I am thinking of maybe making a PowerPoint or something like that, maybe a PDF document with everybody's uploads for the different projects and putting that on the Canvas page. So let me know if that's something you're for, something you're against. Please let me know. I don't want to put anybody's work up if they don't want anybody to see it. I mean, we'd see it in critique anyway, but just something I was thinking of doing just so you guys can see what everyone is doing, maybe motivate you to get some stuff done. I moved here back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on Monday, so I have not done my assignment for this week, but I will get that done. I've already asked my dad if I could draw him, so I'll be getting that done later on this weekend, and I will upload that at least to the Instagram, if not do an Instagram live check-in here and there this weekend. Okay, great. So I'm gonna go ahead and get everybody's drawings together and find a way to post those to the Canvas page so you guys can see them. There's some really stellar work going on. I am really, really impressed. So it's really, really cool to get to see you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you guys are needing anything, let me know. I will be drawing with you. I'm really excited about this week. So this week we are talking about portraits. So just the face, maybe like a little bit of the upper body. So I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. I'm going to take us real quick, as usual, to the Canvas page and show you a little bit about what's going on here. So this week, I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint lecture on portraits. I do still have up that extra credit assignment that has the hands, feet, and facial features. Some of you did turn that in. This is a really, really wonderful exercise for this week's drawing. It's just, doing 5 different hands, 5 different feet, and 5 of each facial feature: eyes, nose, mouth, and ears in different views. I'll accept 3 if you only want to do 3, but it does say 5. And then there's 10 figure quick gestures. We did have that as a sketchbook assignment before, so that's not necessary for the extra credit, although it is always great to practice. We have that line of action website still on week 11. So that is an option that is there for you. Speaking of extra credit, while this is loading back up, we still do have the Instagram extra credit. If you tag me in any of your Instagram uploads as you're drawing, you do get 2 extra credit points for every time you tag me, and you can do that up to 5 times. So we have, for this week, the assignment for this week will be a 2 to 3 hour self-portrait. If you want to do a portrait of somebody else, that's okay. It does need to be from direct observation. Now, a little note, and I'll talk about this a little bit more whenever we get into the lecture a little bit, but it doesn't just have to be a straight self-portrait. I mean, I want you to draw your portrait from observation, but if you want to get a little crazy and add some conceptual things in there, and I'll show you some examples from some different artists today during the lecture, that's awesome. I mean, I want you to have fun with this. It's not just, oh, I'm going to sit in the mirror and draw things. Have a little fun this week if you want, especially with everything that's going on. It might be a little therapeutic to get weird or silly, or, let any emotions that you're feeling out. So I do have some additional reading uploaded, and I really recommend taking a look at these this week. They're really short. They're really great reinforcements for what I'm going to be talking about today. Again, the Selwyn Lamy, I had some different pages uploaded a couple of weeks ago, but this one's really great. It gives you some really good ideas for setups for self-portraits. It also talks a lot about lighting and the different dramatic views that you can get with lighting in the features. There's some examples of some artwork. It's really, really brief, but really, really fun. There's this really cool image in there. If anything, take a look at that. This artist is pretty wonderful. And then I also have, it's a little outdated, but it is really, really great for those of you who really like anatomy. This is Louise Gordon's How to Draw the Human Head, Techniques in Anatomy, and she goes super in depth. Like I said, the wording's a little bit outdated, but it's a really great book to have in your collection. It's going to talk all about the skull features, the musculature, what the different muscles do, and then has some different drawing tips and things like that as well. So take a look at that. You don't have to go crazy or study or anything. But that's it for this week so far as the Canvas page goes. Does anybody have any questions so far? So far, so good. If you do have any questions at any point, just throw those up into the chat, and I will definitely take a look at and address those. So really excited to be doing portraits. I do consider myself mostly, I do a lot of weird things, but where I'm really, really happy is with portraiture. I do consider myself a little bit of a portrait artist, because the face is just so incredible and so complex, and it can do so many things. So I'm really, really excited to get into this with you guys today. So without further ado, I'm going to make this as quick as possible. We're going to go over to our PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to give a little bit of a lecture on portraits, and then I will let you guys go to get drawing. So here we go. Lecture time it is. All right, let me tab over here to the PowerPoint. All right. My computer's a little bit slow today, so I apologize. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about self-portraits and other portraiture. This is a self-portrait I did in my undergrad about having to work customer service, a telephone job. That's me being strangled in a cubicle. Hope you all enjoy. I hope none of you ever relate to this. So self-portraits are super fun, especially because when you're drawing yourself, you're always available. It's really hard to find models for portraits, so self-portraits are really fun. Get to know your face real well. Some anatomy basics. So like anything else, proportions are going to be different in each person, and with the face especially, different proportions will differ based on gender, race, ancestry, and just everybody's a little bit different. No face is actually symmetrical. Everybody's face is a little bit asymmetrical, so it's really fun to study the different faces. So there are many different ways that you can approach a portrait whenever you're starting to draw. Some people prefer doing planes, some people prefer doing grids, some people will actually get in depth and draw the anatomy. Find which works best for you. Try a lot of different things, because sometimes when you're drawing, I know I use a range of different techniques depending on the person, because everybody's face is so complex and different. I might use different techniques if something isn't looking just right. Also do a lot of angle studies. Angles are key. If you take a look at where like the eyes and the heads are at the top of the page, about a third of the way down, second row, basically doing lots of angle studies off to the side of your extended study is really, really helpful. I do that a lot. So a little bit on proportions. Normally I start off with a circle for the top of the skull, and then I put in the jawline. About halfway from the top of the head to the chin is where the eye line will be, and in between the eye line and the bottom of the chin, halfway there, is typically where the nose will go. Then if you're looking at the bottom of the nose and the chin, usually the mouth goes a little bit above halfway between those. So also the corners of the mouth typically come down from the center of the eyes. Again, that is certainly something that changes with expression as well as person to person. I like to use T's whenever I'm trying to figure out where the nose sits on a person, and then also where the mouth sits. For the nose, I will draw a T, top of the T being in between the eyes, and then the stem coming down, and then same nostrils, there will be the top of the T, and then coming down for the philtrum or the Cupid's bow to figure out what the mouth is. And that typically works really well for when you're trying to find where things are. I do want to challenge you. If you look at the bottom there, I have some no signs on this little quick sketch that I did. I really want you to focus on the different features and challenge yourself to branch out beyond what you might have done as a kid. A lot of new artists will still use like almond shapes for eyes, and that's not necessarily what an eye is shaped like. So really pay attention to those. Again, I really recommend doing that extra credit study of the different facial features. That's really going to help you out and let you get a feel for the anatomy of different parts of the face. Moving on. Couple more tips. Do multiple studies from multiple angles and points of view, especially when you're just doing your quick thumbnails. Again, different ways to approach the drawing, but always start off the way you normally would, with thumbnailing and gestures and really quick sketches and studies before getting into an extended drawing. With portraits especially, it's really good practice to do just some quick studies of all of the different facial features in the view that you're going to be drawing them for your drawing before you get into the extended drawing. That will just save you tons of time and make your life a lot easier. Things will come together a lot more quickly if you do some studies beforehand. There's a lot of prep work for portraiture and it takes a little bit longer, but it's definitely worth it. Keep in mind always the underlying anatomy of the face, the skull, and the muscles, which I will get into very, very brief detail later. Those slides that come later on, I'm going to let you really take a look on your own. At those, I'm not going to get super in depth into the anatomy like I had with just the full figure. Some notes on value. Above the lip, there is typically a very bright highlight. For those of you who like to do your makeup, wherever you do your contouring and your highlighting, those are typically areas on the face that when you are drawing them, depending on the light source and the environment, those are typically highlighted when you're drawing as well. The nose will typically have also a really, really bright highlight as it is the closest in space to the viewer. And I'm talking about like when somebody is full on frontal view, you'll see that there's a really bright highlight. Try not to, especially if you're using charcoal, try not to shade in much of the nose, especially the tip of the nose until the end, because usually it's hard to erase out all of the information to make sure that's super bright, and then the nose won't come forward and the picture will tend to be flat. So that's just a suggestion that I normally do. I'll normally circle off the tip of the nose and then I will save that for last, and I won't touch that area until the very end so that I can keep the paper nice and bright. Also remember your reflected light. Remember the ball that has the different cast shadows and things like that. Reflected light is poetry. So make sure you're really paying attention to where the reflected light falls, thinking of the head when you're first looking at it and preparing as just basic shapes in space like we would if it were a still life, and really looking out for those areas. A note on eyes. This is a nice little drawing by M.C. Escher, one of my favorites. Eyes will typically contain the lightest highlight depending on the light source and angle. Eyes are expressive and give the portrait life, and the whites of the eyes are not actually white, so be sure that you're checking your value if your eyes are looking really creepy or like they're standing out. Typically that's because you need to add a little bit of shade into the whites of the eyes. Couple more tips. Gravity is real, as you can see over here on this lovely red chalk drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. As a person ages, the muscles, the skin, fat pads, especially if you look at like the corners of the mouth, there are these two little dots that are very beautiful that you'll see on older people, and they droop and they become more pronounced with age. Along with gravity, it's common for newer artists to draw every nook and cranny or line that you may see. I know when I first start drawing somebody, I'm very guilty of that too until I have more time to step back and edit. Make sure you play with adding and removing and lightly suggesting things, and step back from your drawings often so that you can really get that likeness honed in. Also a note on gravity: if a person has their face tilted to the side that is closest to the earth will typically have a little bit of a droop and won't actually be completely symmetrical, so keep an eye out for that as well. A little note on lighting. The face is really complex and lighting does interesting things to it. Really play with how you light the figure. I don't know what your individual lighting situations are at home, but I mean, if you're using just a regular lamp, maybe try throwing a scarf or something, a non-flammable scarf, lightly over the lamp to maybe dampen it down. Play with that. If you have a desk light, move it to different angles, move it farther away from you, move it closer. See what the light does and see where you want it. Light can add a lot of drama. It can also add a lot of softness. So whatever you're going for with your drawings, make sure you really play around with the light. I normally play around with it and I take pictures at different times, and then I scroll through the pictures and see which light source I like, keeping note on where the light was when I took those pictures. And then I'll set that light up and then I'll start drawing from there. Don't forget to thumbnail. Just a real truth, it takes a lot of time for a likeness to emerge. The more you keep at it, the more you will learn about drawing. Portraits are really great because that's where the actual doing a drawing really teaches you the more that you're looking at it, because we see ourselves all the time. So when we're drawing ourselves, it's really great because we know kind of what we look like. We can recognize ourselves, so we can see where things are wrong. So as you keep drawing and stepping back and then looking in a mirror and coming back to things, the drawing is really going to teach you a lot. This is a drawing that I did in my undergraduate as well, and it was a subtractive drawing. I filled up the whole paper with charcoal like we did the second week of class with still life, and then I worked subtractively and additively, and we had to do 8.5 hours for that class, and I brought it in at 8.5 hours, and it was still not even remotely looking like me. It looked awful, to be quite honest with you. And then my teacher said, go ahead and take it home and keep working on it. And this is what I got after 24 hours. And it's still not perfect, but I learned so much doing this drawing and allowing it to have that amount of time. I'm not saying that you guys should do 24 hours or anything like that, but I do recommend taking at least the time to make sure the likeness is really coming to a place where you're satisfied with it. A little bit more on anatomy. Some landmarks that you'll see that may help if you draw them in are the cheekbones or the zygomatic arches. They're very pronounced on a person. You can see them. You can see the highlights and the shadows that will play on those. So that will really bring out a person. The bridge of the nose, especially if you're doing a 3/4 or a profile, aka a side view of a person, the bridge of the nose and the angle that it makes is really important. Keep an eye out for that. The angle of the jaw or the mandible, super important. That's really going to give you the face shape. That's what's going to help you fit your landmarks where they need to be, such as your eyes, your nose, and your mouth, and that's what's going to make a person begin to stand out. The chin itself, is there a cleft in it? Is it straight? How round is it? Is it square? Is it circle? Your Cupid's bow or your philtrum, that's in between your nostrils, that little space above your lip. Always good to see. Really mark out the angles of the bottom of that philtrum and the top of the lip. That's going to be super key for getting your likeness to come through. Your frontal eminence. Okay, I'm going to switch back to me here for a second. So your frontal eminence, it's more pronounced on men, but it's kind of like right here. It's where your superciliary arch and your frontal bone kind of meet. So it's like these two lines here. They're really pronounced in like comic book characters and stuff like that. But especially in men, you will see those more. Different people have it more pronounced based on their genealogy. It looks really cool. You'll see the shadows there. It makes for great portraiture, so keep an eye on that. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. Okay, and then also in men, there's the Adam's apple in the throat too that's also more prominent, so keep an eye out for those. This is just an FYI, and I have these on the slide. I am not going to go into any detail, even though I could talk for hours and hours and hours about the skull and facial anatomy because I love them. But this is the skull. If you want to take a look at that, you can point out different things on your own face as you're doing things. If you see like a shadow or an angle, you're not sure what it is, you can take a look at these two slides here and see what those are. These are the muscles of the face. Again, if you want some more in-depth information on the anatomy of the skull and the muscles on the face and what they do and how you might see them in the figure, definitely take a look at this week's reading from Louise Gordon on how to draw the human head, because she goes into some really great detail, and it'll all come together a little bit more if you take a look at that reading. So with that, we're going to look at some art. Who doesn't love art? I love art. Oh, hey, my animation worked. That's cool. Okay. So, the emergence of the artist. This is one of the most iconic and one of the most important portraits ever painted. This is Albrecht Dürer's self-portrait of 1500. Albrecht Dürer was kind of like the Da Vinci of the Northern Renaissance. So during the High Renaissance, when you had, in the south of Europe, you had Da Vinci and you had Raphael and you had Michelangelo. That was kind of one area of the Renaissance. There was also the Northern Renaissance, which happened more in Flanders, where there was a different style of art, but it was also a really high period of creativity. Although, like in the South, most artists typically worked for guilds, maybe under the name of one artist that had reputation, but even with the reputation, they were known as guild workers and not so much as individuals. Now, this portrait that Dürer did is iconic because it really puts a lot of focus on the artist as an enlightened individual and not just a craft worker. You can see on the left-hand side that he has his AD and the year 1500 above it. That's his signature, and across he has an inscription that says, "Thus I, Albrecht Dürer of Nuremberg, made an image of myself in appropriate colors in my 28th year." He was 28 years old when he painted this. Amazing. But those two pieces are on either side and create one of those lines, like an invisible line that runs straight between his eyes. He really wants you to focus on his face and his expression and see him as like, hey, I'm an artist. Now, this frontal pose was something that at the time was very iconic. As you know, in Renaissance art, many people used the same poses, no matter what guild they were. Or if one guild came out with a pose, another guild would take that same pose and create work. This was a stance that Christ would take in a lot of paintings, which shows it as very important, and it's more to show an enlightenment and an importance. And also the light is falling very heavily as well on his hands to show that, hey, I'm an artist, I'm a person, and the work of my hand is important. So this is really, really iconic. This is when artists really started to be known as individuals and not just as guilds or craftsmen. This is when more free thought and conceptual things started taking place. This is kind of like a catalyst, and it's a slow evolution, but it's very important to know. So without further ado, I will move on. I'm going to show you a little bit of self-portraiture from this time. So this is Raphael's School of Athens in the Vatican. Very, very famous painting. But if you look over on the right-hand side, can you find Raphael? There he is. So this is Raphael's self-portrait that he put into this iconic painting in the School of Athens. And you'll see a lot of different artists doing that. Also in this painting, I'm not going to show you where, but there's also he did a portrait of Leonardo da Vinci as well as Michelangelo, who were his contemporaries and also people that he looked up to in the art world as well in this painting. Michelangelo, this is one of his last paintings. This is The Last Judgment, also in the Sistine Chapel at the Vatican. So Michelangelo actually did a portrait of St. Bartholomew's flayed skin. He used that as his self-portrait in this, and there are a lot of different theories as to why he may have done that, but I want you, with your assignment, to really be thinking of how you would like to portray yourself. Again, drawing from observation, but still thinking of what you want to convey, and whether that's how you maybe distort or abstract things, or maybe you add something to your drawing. Keep it in mind. Be thinking about it. You are all familiar with Vincent van Gogh and his self-portraits. I had to put them in here because they are so lovely and soft and iconic. And I know many of you really like Vincent van Gogh. So there's his self-portraits. Frida Kahlo, her portraits are very infused with emotion, and they're very reflective of her life. And she is definitely someone to be looking at if you like portraiture or self-portraiture, or if you want to start thinking more conceptually about any of the drawings that you do. Frida is definitely someone to be looking at. I'm going to start this PowerPoint with a little bit more of the iconic artists, and then I'll move into some lesser known ones as well. But Frida is great to be looking at. This is her wounded deer that I believe she painted after one of her spinal surgeries. This is the two Fridas. It's a dual self-portrait. She has two portraits of herself. If you're not familiar with Frida's story, I do highly recommend taking a look at least the Wikipedia page, or taking a look at some different information on her historically, and a deeper look into some of these paintings that she does. Very infused. So again, you can do a dual self-portrait as well. And this is the broken column. Frida did have a lot of medical issues and a lot of different surgeries, and she did suffer a great amount of pain. So these were ways that she could express what she was feeling. The last one was more about heartbreak. This one, again, is about her spine and her medical conditions. And if any of you are a fan of The Fifth Element, this painting also inspired an outfit from that movie as well. Moving right along, Andy Warhol also did a lot of self-portraits. He did them in screen print, photography, and paint. He was definitely recognizable in his self-portraits. He was a celebrity person, but his self-portraits were also really unique as well. Taking a look again at another Andy Warhol with the skull. So be thinking, you can always use photographs as reference for how you want to paint things, but again, make sure you're drawing from observation in a mirror. You'll be able to bring out your features more. Alice Neel is a wonderful painter. She is also an alumni of the Philadelphia Academy of Fine Art, which is a great program if you're looking for a master's program. She's one of the most famous portrait artists. This is a self-portrait that she did in a chair. And these are just two other portraits for you to take a look at. Jackie Curtis and Rita Red and Ginny and Elizabeth are the names of those. So be working from observation when you're doing your self-portrait, but feel free to, draw in however, any manner that you like, to bring out whatever conceptual concerns or aesthetic concerns that you have. Really let yourself be loose and free with this one. Charles White is an amazing painter, as well as he has some amazing drawings, prints. This is a self-portrait that he did, and here are some more of his works in portraiture. This is The Preacher. You may have seen this in your art history classes. He's definitely an artist to look at if you have not seen his work. And this is Awaken from the Unknowing, which is a really beautiful study as well. Oskar Kokoschka is a really interesting portrait artist. He does kind of some crusty portraits of people. He really overemphasizes hands especially, as well as faces. This is a self-portrait that he did, as well as the last slide was a self-portrait too. This one is called A Knight Errant, and it is a self-portrait. He's one of the German expressionists, and really, really interesting if you take a look at him. But this is a self-portrait of him too. So be thinking about how you want to portray yourself. You can go ahead and put yourself in whatever fantasy land you want, as long as you are drawing your face from observation. Chuck Close. If you're not familiar with Chuck Close, he is an incredible artist, and these drawings are larger than life. They are enormous. If you ever see his work in person, it's stunning. These pictures do not do them justice. If you look at the one on the left was before he had a spinal blood clot. He's currently wheelchair bound. So the one on the left was a drawing that he did earlier in life. And again, this is larger than life. It's something like 11 or 12 feet high. It's enormous, and it's photorealistic. It's insane. The one on the right, after he had become wheelchair bound, he started finding different ways to paint, and so he made these little paintings and put them together to make his massive, larger than life scale realized. So he would piece these together, and he's been known to paint. He has like a special rig that he's made for his hand. He's painted with his teeth, but he's still going, and he's an amazing artist to be looking at. His work is out of this world. So take a look at him if you have some spare time. Oh no, it came out blurry on the left. Van Howell is an illustrator. He's really great. The image on the left was an image of his alter ego. For whatever reason, it came out blurry, even though it is a large image file. But that's okay. You can take a look at his website if you like. He has a whole page just on self-portraits that he's done from, I believe, the 1960s or 70s until quite recently. So if you look at the one on the right, that's a self-portrait of him drawing a sketch that he did. He also illustrated a book called Proust for Beginners, and this is a portrait drawing that he did of Proust, which is really interesting and really bizarre and strange. So I wanted you to take a look at it and let you know that this is something that you can be thinking about, especially if you're looking at either minoring or majoring in illustration. This is a really great opportunity for you to really branch out and try something new and get funky. Go for it. Kathy Kollwitz, who you probably recognize from our main page icon, she is also a German expressionist. She is my favorite artist in the entire world. She does a lot of self-portraits. She has a very gentle hand. She's known a lot for her prints. She did some propaganda posters. She's known very much for her depictions of children and people during wartime. These are two more self-portraits that she did. Notice how loose she can be and gestural. She can also be pretty tight with how she does things. Most of her drawings are really loose. If you take a look at the one from the previous page, you can see that the shading that she did on her arm is just a really thick scribble with the side of the charcoal, but if you step back, it's still very lifelike and very real. So there's Kathy Kollwitz there, and these are just a couple of her well-known drawings. Woman with a Dead Child is probably one of the most iconic historical drawings, and then there's Death, Woman, and Child as well. In all of her figures, you can kind of see some of her her traits come out in there. So I feel like a lot of her work is self-portraiture. She's definitely somebody to be looking at. Okay, and that is all she wrote. How you guys doing? Hanging in there? I don't know if Chuck Close is losing his sight or not, David. I would not be surprised if he is. I can take a look and get back to you. And don't worry about being late. If any of you came in late, these all do record, and the recordings upload to the YouTube page in case you want to go back and take a look at anything. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I'll give that a minute for you. I will be here. Just another quick tip: if you are doing portraits of other people, either for this assignment or in the future, I am totally guilty of this. Most artists are. Whenever you're doing portraits, it's really easy, especially if you're used to doing self-portraits, to insert your own facial features into whoever you're drawing. So that's something to be aware of, and make sure that you're doing studies of the person that you're drawing and not just adding your facial features or different angles. I know I'm very guilty of adding my nose onto other people's faces. I don't know why that is, but that's a real struggle. So yeah, with this assignment, branch out with medium. Jill, yes, you can absolutely do layers. No digital art though, so however you would like to do layers, go for it. I encourage you to try anything you want. Whatever medium you want. Again, because of the current situation, there are no size requirements. Work big if you can. I promise you, working big is really beneficial when you're learning, because you are able to get in those angles and be a little bit more loose and see things when you draw things from life and you draw them larger, especially if you're drawing them larger than they actually are or life size, it's a lot easier to get used to the different features and the angles. Yes, you can do a skull and then your face and then animalistic details. You can layer all of your drawings on tissue paper or vellum or frosted Duralar or transparency paper or whatever you like. I think that sounds awesome. I encourage you to experiment. Also, if you're doing experimentation, that adds into your time too. So if you just want to play around with this assignment, that's fine. Just try and get at least a decently rendered drawing of your face so that I can recognize your likeness. And it's good just to study the facial features, but I really encourage you guys to branch out with different mediums. You can do a painting if you want, because painting and drawing go hand in hand. I do know that some of you really enjoy painting, and personally I think painting and drawing are like the same thing, except painting and color is just a whole level of difficulty that's added to it, especially if you're using oil paints, because the pigments mix differently. But if that's what you like or you want to try it, go for it. I encourage you. And if you have any questions, if you want any suggestions on different things you could experiment with, anything, just let me know. Again, I'm really excited for this assignment, and I'm really excited to see what you do. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a self-portrait or if I'm going to be doing a portrait of someone else. I really like to work at like 2 or 3 in the morning, so I'll probably end up doing a self-portrait, but I really look forward to this assignment. And then next week what we have on tap is I'm going to be introducing you to the final project, which is going to be super fun. It is awesome. It's an assignment that I had to do in undergrad that I tweaked for you guys. I changed it up a little bit, but it's one of my favorite ways to draw. I still do this to this day. It's going to be really, really cool, and you'll either love it or you'll absolutely hate it. Either way, I'm really excited to introduce it to you, and I know whatever you make is going to turn out great. So get your assignments in. I'm going to leave the video running for a little bit longer. If you have any questions, the image will be up there, but I will still be here looking at the chat for the next several minutes. So if you have any more questions, type them in the chat. Please feel free to email me. Don't forget to tag me in your Instagram posts at Prof Feathers. Again, take care, stay safe. I really, really miss you guys. This is still my favorite day of the week, even though it's digital. So I'm really, really happy that you guys could tune in. Take care, and I will see you soon.